Coin traders, how's it going? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at Celestia TIA on that ticker. Maybe it's pronounced Celestia anyway. If you do know proper pronunciation, I'm saying it wrong, feel free to comment down in the comment section below and correct me, no problem there. But definitely going to be diving into this great chart setup. We're going to talk all about it today. Not going to dive too much into the fundamentals, but just know that Celestia is a brand new project. It actually did launch on the 31st, so Halloween, basically the 31st of October. And so very short time frame that it has been out here, so only a couple months, and you can see we've just run up a ton so far. So since the bottom and the low right now, about almost 600%. So very nice gains, but obviously in such a short amount of time, have to be wary of a little bit of a pullback, and we're going to be diving into the longer term charts as well. But yeah, not really too much to be worrying about right now because we're looking so good on the shorter term setups right now. So if you are following me over on Twitter, did make a tweet earlier about how I like it, and we are on a clean slate with this project, which is going to be extremely nice since we haven't had just a couple years of negative price action, for example, and actually launching a couple months ago or several months ago is a great thing since it does put us kind of at the bottom of that essential bear market that we all think. So great time to launch, not necessarily launching at the peak like a lot of other projects that we know did. So yeah, plenty more to talk about with TIA Celestia. So make sure you are dropping me a follow over on Twitter or X at coin_trades is the handle over there. We'll be doing plenty of analysis, talking about great fundamentals, do a lot of things like that. So looking forward to all the chit chat and chatter over there. So I guess before we start, let's talk about the current ranking. So right now, number 38, since we are up a bit. So we were back down in about 40-ish range yesterday before we had this nice little rally and pump going on right now. So plenty of opportunity and potential. Current market cap, 2.4 billion, so plenty of room to grow to the upside. And especially with a project that's this new, only being a few months old, to already see it sitting up this high amongst some of the bigger established names is a pretty good sign in my opinion, especially since we didn't come overvaluated in the beginning. We actually saw the market cap itself grow. So plenty of room and potential, especially because we do have a lot of opportunity for airdrops and a lot of great things for staking here on Celestia. And if you do want me to dive into that further and deeper in a different video, definitely let me know down in the comment sections below, and we can do a deeper dive onto the fundamentals and some of the kind of more informational fundamental parts about Celestia as well. But yeah, so pretty excited. So even potential 10x from here would be about a $24 billion market cap. So coming off and especially being a very good opportunity and seeing a lot of lockup from staking. Could even see this a lot higher. So even potential 20x to about the $50 billion market cap range. So potentially we would be looking at about a $300 price target speculatively for the price cycle high. So yeah, a little bit of your Hopium and Moonboy activity right there. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this chart here. So one of the great things that I was actually looking about this chart here setting up is we have a very nice pattern for essentially we have very established supports and resistances that we tested multiple times. So we came up essentially rejected just below, broke this level, set a level as resistance right now about 14,193, pulled back, confirmed a low of support at about 11,7008, found rejection again for the daily close, pulled back, found daily support for the close, rejection for the close, and then we actually found support a little bit higher despite this nasty sell-off wick that we just got over here. Actually, that was this one from a couple days ago. So we know that essentially right now we're looking at a very nice setup for what's actually called a rectangle pattern. So if we can actually look at this pattern, you can see rejects pretty much just below this resistance or support line, pulls back, then establishes support, tests it 3 times. And this doesn't always have to be perfect textbook science for 3 times, but obviously in this case, it did happen. So right now we are looking at 3 rejections from the resistance point, 3 supports on this supported level down below, breaking through, and then ultimately retracing and back testing this level as a very nice support point before finally continuing on to the upside. So right now, that's kind of what we're looking at in the chart. So like we said, found up, rejection, support, rejection, support, rejection, support, and then broke through, now pulling back, confirming this level as daily closing support. So thankfully on the candle that just closed for the day, we did actually manage to find a close on top of 14,193. So we actually did get a close on 14,22. So just barely above, but still nonetheless backtesting and confirming this as that point of support for the close, and especially now being able to find the current candle, seeing a lot of nice upsides, gains, and follow through is a very nice sign. So hopefully we can see a little bit more continuation to the upside. Would be nice to be able to break the current trend resistance right now. We're all-time high at 17,296. Like we said, plenty of room to grow to the upside right now. So Combine that with the fact that we're looking at very nice chart structure here. So we had our low kicked off this 20. So yeah, just overall can't really say enough good things about this chart setup right now, especially since we are, let's go ahead and turn off the 50 period EMA anyway, and you can see that we are holding closing support on top of the 26 and the 12. So in between that level is where we found a very nice supportive zone, and especially on the recent candle attempt, wicked down below 26, but ultimately found a very nice supportive close on top of this 12, confirming that support was found on top of this 12 period EMA. So this is one of our very big confirmation signals that we actually have to let us know that this trend's still intact and heading to the upside, especially the fact that we had such an extreme sell-off. Now, we were a little bit of a day late, so since a lot of cryptos were actually rallying yesterday, took a little bit longer for Celestia to actually find that rally, but right now we're looking pretty nice, and we are looking at upside gains for the day of almost about 10% so far. And so from this point to the all-time high right now of 1087. So speaking of, that's one of the great things that I actually like right now about this setup is that we're actually in price discovery mode. There's not any previous sell pressure from all-time highs coming down and people being in losses, since right now we are in all-time highs and everyone pretty much that is in TIA right now has actually gained and is now in profit. So riding this trade out, especially since we are in this very nice uptrend, I do think it'll get a little bit more hype and probably a lot more people and attention, especially as it does start to rise in the market cap ranks and also shows a lot of that price appreciation continuation. So now, since we are actually looking at this as a very nice breakout from this rectangular bullish pattern, then pretty much that's going to actually be one of the things that we look for in the event of a retracement, because this is going to be a very, very strong support point to the downside, especially if we continue to see prices rally much higher. So for example, if prices rally up to about maybe the mid 20s, for example, even if they do retrace and pull back, this would be a very nice support point to actually have prices continue on to the upside, since it was about a month that we actually got stuck up in this overall rectangle. So now if we actually do want to look at a Fibonacci extension based on a logarithmic extension. So essentially, let's go from the low of this recent swing to the swing high right now down to the recent flush low. If we actually look at the 100, that is right below the $20 level. So essentially, that's this level from this bottom to the current all-time high. So for example, from the low to the high, that would be the point at which we would see that extension from the recent flush. So I do think that right now the $20 level would be an extremely nice area to actually see prices run up to just below. I think that from a psychological standpoint as well would be a very big resistance point. So from current prices, for example, up to that level would be about a 28% gain. And then I do think that it is a little bit realistic to expect that we would be stuck up maybe around that level if in fact we do establish 20 as that resistive point. If we do get a strong rejection and sell-off, then we could actually be looking towards a retracement once again. But right now, I think that we would actually be looking at a little bit more support if we do break the all-time high, kind of around the selling pressure zone. So basically from the $15 all the way up to about the $17 zone would actually be a little bit more supportive on this recent pullback if we do in fact run up and reject from 20. The other potential bullish scenario here, if we do get up to 20, is actually break it and then flip that into support as well, ultimately creating the next kind of stair-step type pattern up on this Celestia chart. But now, like we said, the daily chart is actually pretty good, but if we actually look at the weekly, then it's nothing but just continuous upside. So we know that at some point we are going to have to see a little bit more of a longer-term retracement, and especially with the Bitcoin ETF announcement coming up here in a couple of days due for a decision, we could actually end up seeing a little bit of a sell-off for sell the news, which likely would impact the rest of the crypto market, but we know that they're not always extremely correlated. Although most of the time we can typically assume that there is great correlation between all the cryptos in the space. Now, because we are looking at the weekly chart and this chart is still so new, you can see that there aren't even any exponential moving averages because we haven't even had full 12 candles come in yet that we have had and need to actually see a 12 period EMA come in. In addition, we actually don't even have enough data yet to form an RSI or stochastic RSI or plenty of other technical indicators. So from the weekly chart, we actually don't have much data to go off of. But for example, if we actually drop down into the 2-day, still looking very nice as well, holding this 12 period EMA as well, finding these little wick downs in between this zone on top of the 26. But if we actually pull up technical indicators in this instance, you can see we are obviously overextended based on this RSI peaking at about 87.01 and actually finding a higher high in price, yet meanwhile a lower high. So potentially we could be looking at some bearish divergence coming up, and that would be another good case and scenario to be able to say, we're going to be rejecting from 20 if we do in fact get that high, which means we could actually be rejecting from below that. But that's also not to say, especially since this is a new chart and we don't know how it's going to perform, that a lot of times we could actually see this continue to get extended farther to the upside. As you can see, about a month in sideways consolidation has actually allowed the stochastic RSI to actually find a bottom now. So we could end up rolling up and seeing upside pressure from the stochastic RSI, which actually would allow the regular RSI to actually see higher highs as well. So now still on the 2-day chart here, turned on volume because this is an extremely great setup for volume. As you can see, once we actually entered this rectangle sideways consolidation point, saw a huge fall off and decrease in all volume, yet did maintain support on top of this 12-period EMA when we were at the lowest volume on this 2-day exponential. I'm sorry, on the 2-day chart. Following that, we actually saw the extremely nice breakout and kickoff after this initial flush, which did show some selling pressure getting rejected, which is why we ended up closing with this very nice 2-day chart. And that was obviously met with this very nice bullish candle. Following that, we actually saw engulfing, and by that we do mean a bullish engulfing bearish candles for the bodies. So for example, the bodies of these bearish candles actually only fit in about the top half of this bullish 2-day candle. So another very good sign, and especially as we see falling off bearish volume decreasing, still maintaining support on top of this 12-period EMA. So a lot of decreasing bearish volume, seller's exhaustion met up with that support point, and now we are on our follow through as we do look to scout price discovery and that new all-time high in that blue sky breakout. So what I would love to see is still plenty of bullish volume coming in as we do push prices higher. Now, if we do start to see bullish volume tapering off as prices do get higher as well, or even potentially flatline and stagnate, then that's going to be kind of a bearish sign where we're going to know that likely a lot of buying pressure is getting exhausted as well, despite having this nice long month-long break where we just saw volumes completely taper off, yet still meanwhile maintaining this very nice support on top of the 12-period EMA, which does sit pretty much right at a closing price level of about 1185. Flipping over into the 12-hour chart now, a lot of great things to say about it as well, because especially as we did kick off this 50-period exponential moving average despite this flush, you can see a very strong 12-hour candle that actually did, I don't know what just happened on my mouse here, but yeah, anyway, you can see one very strong candle that actually knocked out 4 previous bearish candles. So it took 4 bearish candles, and they were also being engulfed by the previous bullish candle as well. So 4 12-hour candles got completely knocked, and it took 4 of them to actually knock out 1 bullish candle, and then again, 1 bullish candle smashed all of those. So another very good sign. And so even looking at the closes on this 12-hour chart from the peaks here, we can actually see a very nice trend line sloping down that actually had our rejection, and then flipped it into support now after the very nice bullish candle broke it. Now, if we actually pull up technicals for this 12-hour chart as well, one of the great things about seeing a price like this just sit kind of sideways for about a month in that type of pattern is that you allow this RSI to actually cool down and normalize. So we were looking at RSI here down before this move, right down in the 40 line, down in between the 40 and the 50, finding support. So basically about a low of 45 on the RSI here. Now, meanwhile, starting to change that trend, yet also still looking at a lot of nice support and buying pressure coming off of the stochastic RSI. So despite the fact that we are looking at longer term charts just being pretty overbought based off what we typically expect out of crypto, given the amount of gains and momentum so far, we know that the shorter term charts are still holding up, which is what we get out of examining these exponential moving averages and being able to confirm a lot of support and setups in the shorter term charts. So because they're still in control, we know that this has a lot more potential to the upside before seeing a reversal on the longer term chart. So that's why we do like looking at multiple time frames in order to get the best assessment of what's actually happening in that crypto for the given space. If you do have any questions about that concept or topic, definitely drop me a comment in the sections below, and I would be happy to explain it or even potentially do a video as much as possible if I can. So now I do want to go ahead and flip into the 4-hour chart here before we go ahead and wrap up on Celestia and actually talk about resistances and supports here right now on the shorter term, since we are looking at getting up to that here before we actually see price discovery and a new all-time high. So first, I want to start with resistances coming just below the all-time high. So let's actually make a line coming right off the all-time high. So right at the 17.29 cent level, or $17.29, excuse me. So very big resistance zone is going to be found pretty much from about 16.5 to 17.29. But because we are looking very bullish right now on this 4-hour candle, we do have plenty of supports to the downside. Most notably right now coming in at 14.63. Now, if we actually can print and maintain a close on top of this very strong level at about 15.4, that should also be able to be a very nice support point as well, especially since it was resistance as well as previous support and resistance. But because we actually haven't printed this candle, we do know that it could still end up seeing a sell-off and being resistance as well. So about 53 minutes left on this 4-hour candle. So we will have, probably by the time this video gets pushed out, a pretty good definitive direction if this level is going to flip or not. So nonetheless, I would expect a very nice supportive zone coming in from 15.4 down to 14.63 at the very worst. So even if we do reject from about 16.5 or even up close to the all-time high, I would expect a very nice support zone to be found before actually seeing another retest of resistance based on the all-time high. Now, one thing that we wouldn't want to see here is actually a rally up rejection blowing through these support zones and then falling back in, providing these as resistance once again. The downside to that would be invalidating of the rectangular continuation pattern, as well as put prices back in this zone, which realistically, especially after a failed breakout attempt, would likely see farther downside. So that could be our bearish scenario where we would actually be seeing a pullback on the weekly charts. Not expecting that to be the outcome, but it's always something that we do have to be mindful of. So that's why we do pay attention so closely to these supports and resistances. But I do think right now we have seen our peak selling pressure have already come in and it has kind of faded. So I do think supports have been holding, especially holding these higher lows, allowing this price now to see a little bit more further action to the upside with increased bullish volume. So like we said, I think the only real threat right now would be if the Bitcoin announcement did come out and be a sell the news event or bearish, then we would see a retracement back into this overall channel and zone for this rectangular continuation. And then even if we do consolidate in continuation and sideways from there, we would need to ultimately end up breaking above the 1420 level once again, or we would be at risk of changing the trend on the daily time frame and actually looking to pull back and set a weekly higher low in that instance. I am still expecting and anticipating a sell-off across the rest of the market since we have been rallying for about the last 3 months or so. So we do need a longer-term pullback and cool down, so that always has to be something that we are mindful and aware of, which is why despite the fact that we have seen a bullish outcome from this continuation pattern so far, we do need to be extremely mindful of what actually happens next and whether prices do return to this overall sideways rectangular zone. Other than that, though, I think things are looking good and excited to write out this trade. I think if we are able to break through this current all-time high, then we would see prices rally pretty quickly all the way up to that $20 psychological level. But we will be keeping you updated over on Twitter and social media, so make sure you are dropping a follow at coin_trades is the handle. But otherwise, that will go ahead and wrap up the video for today. Hope you all enjoyed on this new update for Celestia TIA. Definitely be covering it a lot more on the channel as well as talking about it on Twitter. So if you're not currently subscribed, do hit that subscribe and like button if you have not done so just yet. Also, make sure to drop any questions, comments, issues, disagreements, all that stuff down in the comments sections below. Do love getting back to each and every one of you. Appreciate all the continued love and support as always. Does mean so much. Stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.